Full disclosure, news and commentary. Number 7. What a weekend that we just had. Incredibly exciting stuff. Lots of crazy, weird news stories. It's such a fascinating time in Georgia wrestling. And my commentary is going to be reserved for what I think the most telling and tantalizing story was of the weekend. So you have that to look forward to. Um, okay, let's go ahead and get started. News item: Wildkat Pro Wrestling. We had Luke Hawx, the promoter. He's wrestling Todd Sexton on the show. Um, a reported attendance. By the way, so thrilled. Three different people did show reports, and that's fantastic. I can't be happier about that. You know, of course, Larry and Rod, did it, but other people did as well, and I couldn't be happier about that. I'm also very happy that we're having a number of articles put up. Drew Blood's written some great stuff that I need to go back through that stuff and commentate on it and give my reaction to it because it's worthy of that. And Logan Chase has written things. Other people have written things, and now Chase wrote something that I thought was really interesting in response to all of the shoot, the brainbuster on all that horse shit that happened in the Carolinas. We're going to talk about all of that. But Wildkat, 55, the reported attendance, apparently paid much less than that. It's troubling, but it is an indication that I think wrestling is hot, and where Wildkat runs in New Orleans, they draw hundreds, right? Hundreds, like humongous crowds, right? As big as anybody's doing in Georgia on the regular, right? But they just can't make their way, right? And so, I asked the question, like, why continue to try to break into this market that's just not really open for it, right? The coattails, obviously, of anarchy don't really apply. Now, you can say Total Aggression did a show the night before, and that might have hurt them. They ran against this country music thing. Look, I'll just lay it out like this, because, excuse season is about to start, and that's summertime. Excuse season for promoters. Whatever the excuse is, there's just so much to do, and people are on vacation. People don't want to see your fucking show. Yeah? And that's a hard thing to face. I was a promoter. I went through it too. But it's tough, man. I guess they want to do their pay-per-view thing, so Wildkat ran in that building again. It's just not working. I don't think Cornelia's the crowd for that shit. I just don't. They have a very different kind of wrestling product. They have no chance of attaining a following. The people who are going to go to see a show in Cornelia are not online hardcore wrestling fans. They're just not, and people are not going to travel to that building for a show. That's been proven time and time again. AWE ran in there to, family and friends, and other people have as well. QT used to do a show in there, and nobody fucking came to that either. Now, it's not to say Total Aggression apparently did a little better. Didn't see a show report, didn't see a crowd. I only heard what I heard, that Total Aggression did better. They need to get a show report in. Hello. Who else? Peachstate's 11th anniversary show. Reported paid attendance of 258. It's a move in the right direction for Peachstate. Now, Peachstate could count on humongous shows doing 400 plus. Those days may be behind, but it was great to see Peachstate north of 200, north of 250. It was great to see Shane Marks win their title. That's a guy that, of course, I believed in since day one. Guy's fucking great. Sal and he apparently put on a barn burner, great match, and then Matt Hankins coming out as Matt Hankins. Full disclosure, he and I are good friends, but he's manager of the year right now, right? It's his to lose. I'm curious to see what Logan Chase will come up with, what Doc Brock will come up with, because right now Matt Hankins is the most compelling performer. Um, his serious stuff is better and more out in the public eye than Logan Chase's is, and his funny stuff is way funnier than Doc Brock's. So you go catch him, gentlemen. We'll see. We'll see. And Matt Hankins also with a big, huge declaration that he's taking over Peachstate and he's going to make it his own. A very layered promo. Yeah. When's the last time you've heard that said about somebody's promo in the modern Georgia era? Layered promo. Yeah. Worked on many levels. Obviously worked. And the reaction from the Peachstate crowd I also found to be very interesting. Again, I think Rob is getting better and better with his reports. He's sort of like taking sort of less of his bias into account and just making sort of good judgments based on what he's seeing. I really like his reports. I noticed that his grading scale has sort of opened up a little more than just B plus or the greatest fucking thing I've ever seen. And that's nice to see as well. But I think his take where he sort of noted that a lot of the people in the crowd were cheering Hankins and Shane Marks, and the reason is clear. They're the most interesting thing to watch. I thought also having Romeo and I think having them win the tag thing was also a very smart move. Peachstate's building for the future. Hopefully this is the start of an era of heat in that building because it's dying for it. Yeah. It's dying for it, and that crowd will give it all back to you tenfold. You just got to give it to them first. WrestleMerica drew 200, which is an interesting story because, again, that's a promotion that appears to be on a bit of a downslide. And, of course, a couple of other interesting things happened there. Michael Judas, as Larry Goodman reported, and then corrected himself, did not wrestle his last match there. He's going to be back there again. Okay. And, big shows coming up. I think the one that's important to talk about is Shindig, it's a big show for them. I love that Southern Fried has, and it's one of the things that Charles did, I think that's great, and it's a continuing legacy. Which is Shindig is their big show. I think it sort of epitomizes Southern Fried, right? And there's a lot of expectation, and they're going for it. I'm curious to see what the crowd is going to be. Of course, I've talked a lot about that, how important it is for them to, if they can't get above 651, which is the biggest crowd they've supposedly got at the Boys and Girls Center there, but needing to match or exceed the 500. But more than that is what does this show mean in terms of culminating certain things and possibly starting other things? It's going to be fascinating. I can't wait to read the report, and we're going to have somebody from Southern Fried on Tipping Point next Tuesday to talk about it. I can't wait to hear it. All right. Big stories. Okay. Georgia Premier Wrestling.com. Now, full disclosure, I knew about this shit a long time ago. I knew that Gary Lamb and Southern Honor had acquired that website and were using it for their own nefarious means for months. It was one of Gary Lamb sort of reached out to me and sort of let me know that he did it. I think it was sort of an early way of just like gauging who I was, and Gary, I think one of his strengths is his ability to read people and to understand them, which is what you need to be a promoter. And the ability to read people and understand them, how common is that in the Georgia promoter nowadays? What do I mean? Let me ask this. before I get into the whole website thing and people's takes on it, and it's been fascinating. Um, I'm just go off on a rant. Fuck it. The ability to create an audience is one job of the promoter. The ability to understand who your potential audience is and how to appeal to them is another, right? Is that's I mean we've talked at length about how Peachstate lost their way. They didn't understand who their audience was. They were attempting to create this sort of audience out of whole cloth, right? That would go for work rate stuff and the kind of wrestling that the people who were promoting and running Peachstate were interested in more than what their audience wanted to see. Charles, rest in peace, had that problem also. He did a tournament in association with the AIWF. I mean, that seemed like a million years ago, does it not? Because can we just all fucking agree that the AIWF is fucking bullshit and it's fucking lame as fuck? And when you look at a Mac Classic post on fucking Facebook and all the dummies who respond to these questions like, who's the greatest fucking unsigned talent in the indies right now, and all these marks go on, and then all these fucking wrestlers go on trying to say that they are, I mean, it's fucking embarrassing, right? And Charles once dabbled in that because it's the thought of like, oh, I'll get this title to do at my tournament, and you know, nobody went to the tournament and nobody cared, and the big finish was, you know, who the fuck ever attacked Fred Yehi, and nothing ever came of it, and who fucking cared, right? That was Charles losing sight of who his audience was. As Charles once said to me when we were discussing things sort of privately, I think he did have his fingers on the pulse of who his audience was. He was just like, you know, I like wrestling. That he liked more like work rate stuff, and he was like a wrestling fan who was like fan of the Ring of Honor style and stuff. That's something that people might not know about Charles, right? I think what the kind of stuff that Todd is booking now is much more in line with what Charles wants. Yeah, but Todd has had the ability to interest their crowd beyond just this sort of like niche of the work rate thing. Anyway, Charles said to me, he was just like, look, he's like, I know Southern Fried's not your thing, meaning me. Like, he's like, but my audience once in a while likes fat guys hitting each other with garbage cans. And I thought it was, honestly, it's one of the smartest things that Charles ever said to me. Because it showed me that he fucking understood who his guys was. And in quiet moments away from everybody else, he really understood who that audience was. When he lost sight of that, it was when Southern started to falter, but then he sort of got it all back. Yeah, got it all back. You know, sorry, I'm writing down a note because of the next thing I'm going to talk about. I just thought of something. Why do I bring this up? You know, Charles understood who his audience was, and he made mistakes, but then he learned to appeal to them again. Charles never understood who the Anarchy audience was, right? Those shit posters, remember that? Like, again, it's all these guys that have dreams of like a territory or having a bunch of promotions. They never make it work. It never works. It never, ever works because they don't know who their audience is, right? Murder and Josh with AWE. Apparently, they're going to go back to being AWE again. That's another newsworthy item. But is it? I mean, Combat was clearly where their heart lied. We're going to take it in this new direction. It's going to be this amazing thing, and nobody fucking cared. And so it's like we got to go back to AWE. The question is, what does that mean? And are the very vocal minority that has become their audience, who's like, yay, and I'm crying, and this is making my life better, is that going to help? Well, I'll say this, and this might surprise some people. I think it's a good move because acknowledging your mistakes and acknowledging failure in some way. Now, wrestling people are always loath to just say, I'm fucking wrong, right? They hate saying it. They hate doing it, right? Like, you know, viral will hurt themselves in order to bend over backwards instead of just saying, yeah, we fucking fudged the fucking audience numbers. Instead, they're going to put it on their website. So now the 95% of their fans who had no idea that it was any kind of controversy that they had lied about their audience, now they're fucking opening them up to all this shit, right? Because promoters hate to admit when they're wrong, and bookers hate to admit when they're wrong. I mean, we see a million examples of it today in Georgia wrestling. However, that doesn't mean in action you can't acknowledge that. You know, you may not publicly say it, you may not overtly say it, but you'll show it. And I think going back to AWE is the only move that makes sense. Now, whether that will allow them to recapture some of the spirit of the thing, and more importantly, their audience, remains to be seen. But at least it's sort of an acknowledgement of like, yeah, we fucked up. Now we're going to go back to doing this other thing. Peachstate as well. Kind of fucked up in this era. Let's go back to doing this other thing. That's understanding, hopefully, who their audience is as well. WrestleMerica, what's their audience? Well, I don't know. But, 200 when they were drawing 4. It's a drop. It's a drop. All right, let's talk more about GeorgiaPremierWrestling.com. So Gary Lamb's got this website, and I know about for months, and I think it was Gary Lamb's way of sort of ingratiating himself towards me, or at least sort of going like, hey, Steve, this seems like the kind of thing you would be interested in. I bought this website. So I looked, and I fucking laughed. I mean, how can you not fucking laugh? It's hilarious. It's fucking trolling. Is it something that I would have done? I don't know if I would have been clever enough to think of it. I gotta be fucking honest. I was like, oh god, that's fucking funny. It's funny. And by the way, let me just address the sort of common critiques. The fact that people are taking Kendall Wallace, who's a referee, one of the fucking, I'll say this about Kendall Wallace, one of the 5 best referees that's been in the state in the last 25 to 30 years. It's fucking high praise. To be the 5 best of anything. He's fucking great. Love that guy. But his reaction to Gary Lamb and stuff, and just so hurt and outraged. These fucking hypocrites. Alright, so let me get this straight. Is it more outrageous than OSWA doing a show in the same town declaring to multiple people that part of their intent was anarchy's going to die and their guys are going to come over to us? So that didn't bother anybody. They're doing a show on the 5th Saturday where they're charging $1, going directly competing against the shows in Landmark. Was that okay? And fucking remember this level of outrage or sickness from people who worked in fucking anarchy. Okay, that didn't bother anybody. Didn't bother anybody when Chris Nelms, who Charles basically fucking gave that guy legitimacy. He took, Charles was always a very gracious man and said, Chris Nelms he listened to me and he gave me legitimacy. Chris Nelms was a fucking joke. Can we just fucking quit pretending that wasn't the case? Chris Nelms was a fucking joke, right? And then Charles brought him in, made him a big part of things. Do you remember how terrible those Southern Fred shows were? The Ashley Blade Clark and fucking Leatherface and all these fucking guys. And then Chris Nelms fucking shitting the place up and all this stuff. But Charles gave him legitimacy, and Chris Nelms won over his naysayers and then had some disagreement and then started running a fucking show in the same town. Where's that outrage, every fucking buddy? But a guy picks up a URL because Georgia Premier Wrestling doesn't own and has never thought of having GeorgiaPremierWrestling.com. And he fucking makes a little joke and it's linking to our ticket thing and la 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 la. You know how many people have bought tickets for Southern Honor through the GeorgiaPremierWrestling.com website? I guarantee you 0. It's a fucking troll, and it's a funny one, and it's got everybody talking. I do wish Gary Lamb would quit being so overt about taking credit for shit and blah 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 blah, because I think it kind of ruins the joke, right? Gary Lamb just can't resist, right? He can't resist fucking like, and it's because he does it because it upsets people and it trolls them, and it's great and it's wonderful, and I fucking love it. I fucking love that all this discussion's happening and people are so outraged, right? And I mean, I get it. I do get why people would not like Gary Lamb, right? I get it. Because when you think about it. I mean, like, arrogance, right? An outsider who sort of like bought his way into wrestling. That's the perception. And responds to criticism like a loud, pouty, petulant baby. But enough about Daryl Morris. See what I did there? By the way, I saw GPW finally put out a show report, and they drew, north of 250 themselves, supposedly, so that's great. Hopefully they're going into a good new era. And I've also seen people. That Daryl Morris joke was a good one. Fuck you. Who are bringing up, like, invoking Woody, like, poor Woody doesn't deserve. Fucking Woody's got nothing. This is if you haven't figured out that this is fucking Daryl Morris versus Gary Lamb and they're fucking going head up, you don't know. The interesting story is Gary Lamb, Daryl Morris, blah 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 blah. I don't think there's anybody who ever has a problem with Woody. Who the fuck has a problem with Woody? Everybody loves Woody, as you should love Woody, right? And I mean, criticisms, right? And I do, on the surface, get this, yeah. I mean, this is a guy who's very open about his Christianity and his faith. Yeah, but he actually connives and he spreads false rumors all the time, and he's always trying to undermine behind the scenes, and and a lot of the other wrestling people in the state openly and secretly despise this guy. Yeah, but enough about Scott Hensley. Fuck. But that's not the most interesting or best story in Georgia wrestling this weekend, as fun as it is. I'm going to talk about that right now. So WrestleMerica, this is my commentary. WrestleMerica drew 200 for their show. Now, there's a lot of reasons why their attendance has dipped, and they're going to do a legend show for the next one. They're going to bring in a bunch of legends, and my prediction is that won't do shit. That won't do shit. Maybe their audience will like it, and maybe they'll turn out a little more, enough to cover the costs of those guys showing up. I doubt it. But what's their problem? Read the show report. The card is shit. The main event's pretty good. But what they're lacking is what led to the dip at Peachstate. What has led to the promotions that are doing well have it, and the promotions that haven't done well don't have it, and that's heat. So, full disclosure, Simon Sermon and I are friends. We're very good friends. I've never found him to be anything less than a total pro. I think, honestly, the fact that a guy like him never gets a mention or a nod about being a legend is upsetting, because he is. He's promoted shows and run shows. A lot of people don't know that, but he has. The first openly gay wrestler to really do his thing. There's a documentary about him as well, by the way, in case you didn't know. I like him. Do we agree about absolutely everything? No, I don't think so. And he and I have actually butted heads before about stuff. But at the end of the day, I trust that guy, and I trust his judgment. And he represents the old school, and he's very honest with me, and I'm very honest with him. And that's a rare find in the wrestling business. Yeah, very honest with each other. But so Simon's been working this kid Tracer X, um, and the long and short of it is, and this is coming from different people who have told me different things, and I went to the source himself, Simon, and just asked him to confirm. Here's things that I've heard. Can you confirm them? He confirmed them, and he added information. So apparently, this thing with Tracer and Simon, it's happened on multiple shows where, and let's make this clear: Simon's intent is to get Tracer over huge, nothing else, and it's a statement on the stupidity of youth that they can't understand it, right? So apparently Tracer didn't want to do this perfume thing where Simon sprayed perfume on him, right? Folks, this is how you fucking do a feud. I don't think I need to do a whole fucking video on it, right? I don't need to do a pro wrestler's handbook. You start some shit, you elevate it, you escalate it, then you pay it off in the ring. Heel jumps on you, heel beats your ass, heel humiliates you, all the chips go on the table for a match, blow off, justice served. Yeah? Tracer didn't want to do it, but he got talked into it, so he did the perfume thing. And on this one, Simon's like, we need some fucking heat. We got a WrestleMerica crowd, fucking old school, Americana wrestling crowd. I think you should get blood. But Simon, contrary to most wrestling thinking, and certainly old school guys like me, oh, look at that shit, was like, Simon does not blade, and Simon does not believe in cutting yourself to get blood. He thinks it's stupid. Now, he and I can debate about it's one of those things that he and I disagree about, but the fact is, but he understands the value of the blood. It just, in his mind, it's like, in this day and age, why the fuck you gotta have it real? Okay, that's his position. So he's like, blood capsule, Tracer. Do the blood capsule, fucking stomp you out or whatever they're gonna do. You'll bleed. You'll get over like $1 million, and then you'll get your payoff on the other show. That'll help bring this crowd up. This will help for future shows. This will get us some heat, and blah, 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 blah. And Tracer agrees to do it. And then the night of the show, he fucking wusses out. He's like, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't think it's good. Whatever the fuck his stupid young person rationale is, right? Hear this, understand this, young wrestlers. Fucking the job is to get heat. And if you're a baby face, your job is to fucking get beat down and get sympathy. In the course of a match, in the course of a feud or whatever, your job is to fucking go through tragedy so you can triumph. That's all this shit is. It's fucking storytelling, right? You have to fucking go through tragedy to get the triumph. Tracer didn't want to do it. So Simon, now again, the debate is, was this professional or is this how he should have done? But I can tell what Simon was thinking in his mind. It's like, fine, you want to get out of this fucking kid? You can get out of it. And we're going to give the crowd the fucking shit-tastic ending of all time, which is Simon does a walk and talk basically, and then he just walks out. And he fucking leaves Tracer holding the bag and teaches him a little lesson. And Tracer goes running after him, and it's all fucked up. Oh, I fucking love it. I love it. Now, maybe Tyson Dean doesn't love it. Maybe WrestleMerica doesn't love it. I don't know. I don't know what their take is. And it certainly seems to leave that part of their card in shambles, right? But on the big picture, I think it's a great lesson. I think it's a great thing for people to learn from, which is when you are being given the gift of heat, when you are being given the opportunity to rise up, eventually, if you want the triumph, and if there's one knock I have about the modern fucking wrestling game, everybody wants the triumph. Nobody wants the tragedy. Yeah, everybody wants to be over like Rover, and everybody cheer and be the badass and be the conqueror without any resistance. And you can see it with how people watch wrestling, right? I didn't watch Money in the Bank, but I was more interested in people's reaction to it. But Brock Lesnar wasn't even technically in the match, and so it's like, the WWE recognizes they're in the shitstorm right now. They have no heels worth a fuck. They have nothing interesting going on. The most interesting thing on their show is Bray Wyatt's fucking ridiculous shit. That's the best thing they've got going. And they got Foley out there pimping this new version of the Pussy Hardcore title. And, you know, they're doing whatever they can in the third hour to get people to watch because nobody gives a fuck. And so, yeah, Brock comes in and just gets... everyone's so wrapped up and mad about it. That's the name of the game, dipshits. Yeah. Gary Lamb, I wish he wouldn't be so overt, just constantly saying, like, everyone's talking about me. It's like, no shit, dummy. Like, that's great. I think continually doing it is a good trolley heel move, but the more you talk about it, eventually it's just going to lose its impact. But that's just my opinion. I can't front. He is supposed to get people talking, and it's working, right? And Simon Sermon was just trying to give a little emotion, a little heat, and Tracer X agreed to do a blood capsule. You won't do a blood capsule? What a fucking pussy. Like, what the fuck? Young guys, heat is the name of the game. Not just who's the best fake fighter. Heat. You know what heat is? Heat's that Matt Hankins promo that helped get 250 plus people in a building that at times lately has had 100 or less. Heat is Corey Hollis going from being a good hand to being the guy who's basically the main event of the two promotions that are arguably the top two. Heat. It's what Logan Creed uses to not only remain relevant, but to keep his stature as the guy. Heat is what Gunnar Miller's trying to do. And that guy hasn't wrestled in a ring in forever, and he's managed to stay relevant. And this guy's going on a show, and this guy's going on a show, and you know how many people contacted me to say, like, fucking Gunnar talked about you, and, you know, Larry puts up a thing, like, here's Gunnar Miller's video, and at the whatever minute mark he talks about Steve. Have I watched it yet? I have not, but am I going to? Oh, you fucking best believe it, and I can't wait to hear. Heat. Do you hate it? Are you mad about it? We can debate all kinds of things, but at the end of the day, Tracer versus Simon. Simon is right and Tracer is wrong. Now, we can talk about execution of things. Should Simon have walked out in that way? Blah, blah, blah. To me, I could read it as an attempt of Simon's going to teach Tracer a lesson and leave something open-ended enough that maybe they can salvage something out of it without, in his mind, whoring himself by going through a match that serves no purpose now. I get it. But do you? Do you get it yet? Hopefully someday you will.